He sat there like a ghost among the living, watching people rush past Gate 32 without a single glance in his direction. Serafina Vale, once the most powerful CEO in the tech industry, now felt more invisible than the janitor mopping floors nearby. His custom wheelchair, worth more than most people's cars, might as well have been a prison cell. The storm outside matched the one brewing in his chest, violent, unpredictable, and utterly destroying everything in its path. 3 hours. That's how long he'd been sitting here, waiting for a flight that kept getting delayed. 3 hours of watching families embrace, couples hold hands, and business people talk loudly into their phones about deals worth millions. Nobody saw him. Nobody cared. His assistant had quit last month, his so-called friends had stopped calling after the accident, and his own family, well, they made it clear that a paralyzed man was bad for their image. The accident had happened 18 months ago. A drunk driver had slammed into his Tesla on a rainy night just like this one. The doctor said he was lucky to be alive, but Serafina wondered what was so lucky about losing everything that mattered. His legs, his independence, his dignity, all gone in a matter of seconds. The business world had moved on without him. His board of directors had pushed him out with a golden handshake and fake sympathy, and everyone who once begged for his attention now treated him like he was contagious. Lightning flashed outside the massive airport windows and Serafina flinched. He hated storms now. They reminded him of that night, of the sound of screeching tires and breaking glass. The doctors said the nightmares would fade with time, but 18 months later, he still woke up screaming. Not that anyone was there to hear him anymore. His phone buzzed with another flight delay notification. 2 more hours. He closed his eyes and tried to ignore the pain shooting through his back. The wheelchair was supposed to be comfortable, ergonomic, designed for long periods of sitting. But nothing could make this bearable. Nothing could make any of this bearable. A child's laughter cut through his dark thoughts, bright and pure like sunlight through storm clouds. He opened his eyes and saw a little girl, maybe 6 years old, spinning in circles near the gate. Her mother was trying to catch her, both of them giggling despite looking exhausted. The woman was beautiful in a natural way, no fancy clothes or expensive jewelry, just genuine warmth radiating from her smile. Serafina found himself staring, remembering what it felt like to be happy. The little girl had stopped spinning and was now looking directly at him with curious brown eyes. She tugged on her mother's sleeve and pointed in his direction. His heart sank. Here it comes, he thought. The mother would grab her daughter and hurry away, whispering about not staring at the disabled man. But instead, something extraordinary happened. The woman looked at him, really looked at him, and her expression wasn't one of pity or discomfort. It was concern. Pure, honest concern for a stranger's well-being. She said something to her daughter, who nodded seriously, and then they both started walking toward him. Serafina's chest tightened with panic. He wasn't ready for this. He hadn't had a real conversation with anyone in weeks. What if he said something wrong? What if they realized who he was and their kindness turned into gold-digging manipulation like everyone else? The woman stopped a respectful distance away and smiled. "Excuse me," she said, her voice warm like honey. "I'm sorry to bother you, but are you okay? You look like you might be in pain." For a moment, Serafina couldn't speak. When was the last time someone had asked if he was okay? When was the last time anyone had cared enough to notice his pain? His throat felt tight and he had to clear it twice before he could answer. I'm fine," he managed, though his voice cracked slightly. "Just waiting for my flight." The little girl stepped forward, unafraid. "Mama says you look sad. Are you sad because of the storm?" "I don't like storms either. They're scary." Serafina's heart nearly broke. This child, this innocent little soul, saw his pain without judgment. She didn't see a failure or a burden, she saw someone who needed comfort. "Yes," he whispered, surprised by his own honesty. "I am sad because of the storm." The woman knelt down to her daughter's level. "Harmony, remember what we talked about? Sometimes grown-ups need friends too." She looked up at Serafina. "I'm Rochelle Washington and this is my daughter Harmony. We're heading to Chicago to visit my sister." "What's your name?" Serafina hesitated. His name was famous enough that people might recognize it, and he wasn't sure he could handle the change in their behavior if they knew who he was. But looking into Rochelle's genuine eyes, he decided to take a chance. "Serafina," he said simply. "Serafina Vale." Rochelle's eyebrows raised slightly. She clearly recognized the name, but her expression didn't change. No sudden greed, no fake excitement, just the same warm concern she'd shown from the beginning. "Well, Serafina Vale," she said, settling into the chair beside him while Harmony climbed onto her lap, "it looks like we're all going to be here for a while. Mind if we keep you company?" Thunder crashed outside, rattling the windows, and for the first time in 18 months, Serafina didn't feel afraid. Instead, he felt something he'd almost forgotten existed: hope. "I'd like that very much," he said, and meant it. The airport coffee shop was overpriced and overcrowded, but Rochelle insisted on buying 3 hot chocolates despite Serafina's protests. "You can argue all you want," she said with a smile that brooked no argument, "but nobody sits in this cold airport without something warm to drink. Not on my watch." Serafina watched her count out exact change from a worn wallet, his chest tightening with recognition. He'd once spent more on a single business lunch than she probably made in a week, yet here she was, spending her limited money on a stranger. The guilt was overwhelming, but when he tried to pull out his platinum card, Rochelle firmly pushed his hand away. "I said I've got this," she said, her tone gentle but firm. "Let me do something nice for someone today. God knows I don't get many chances." Harmony had claimed the chair closest to Serafina, her small legs swinging as she colored in an activity book. Every few minutes, she'd show him her progress, and he found himself genuinely interested in her artistic choices. When was the last time he'd paid attention to something so simple and pure? "Mama works at the big hospital," Harmony announced, switching from a blue crayon to a red one. "She helps sick people feel better. She helped me when I had the flu, and she helped Mrs. Chen next door when she fell down." Rochelle returned with the drinks, her cheeks slightly flushed. "Harmony likes to tell everyone about my job," she said, settling back into her seat. "I'm a registered nurse at Chicago General. Night shift, mostly, which is why we're traveling during the day. Harmony stays with my neighbor when I work." "That must be difficult," Serafina said, accepting the warm cup gratefully. "Managing everything alone." Something flickered across Rochelle's face: pain, maybe, or old grief. "Her father died when she was 2, she said quietly, glancing at Harmony, who was absorbed in her coloring. "Car accident. Since then it's just been us against the world." Serafina's hand tightened around his cup. Another life destroyed by careless driving, another family torn apart in an instant. "I'm sorry," he said, and meant it more than any condolence he'd ever offered in his corporate life. "Thank you." Rochelle's smile was sad but strong. "We manage. Harmony's the best thing that ever happened to me, and every day I wake up grateful that I get to be her mama. Even when things get tough, even when the bills pile up and I'm working double shifts just to keep our little apartment. She makes it all worth it." The casual mention of financial struggles hit Serafina like a physical blow. Here was a woman working herself to exhaustion to provide for her daughter, buying hot chocolate for strangers with money she probably couldn't spare, and she spoke about it without bitterness or self-pity. Meanwhile, he'd been wallowing in his mansion, surrounded by luxury he could no longer enjoy, feeling sorry for himself because people weren't paying attention to him anymore. "What about you?" Rochelle asked, settling back in her chair. "Are you traveling for business?" Serafina almost laughed. "Business? What business?" His company had been sold, his innovations forgotten, his empire dismantled piece by piece while he sat in rehabilitation centers learning how to navigate the world from a wheelchair. "Not exactly," he said carefully. "I'm between opportunities right now." It wasn't entirely a lie. He did have opportunities, investment offers, consulting gigs, people who wanted to use his name for their projects. But none of it felt real anymore. None of it felt like living. Harmony looked up from her coloring book, studying Serafina with the direct gaze that only children possessed. "Are you lonely?" she asked with devastating innocence. "You seem lonely, like Mr. Peterson who lives upstairs from us. Mama makes him soup sometimes." Rochelle's face flushed. "Harmony, honey, that's not really—" "It's okay," Serafina interrupted, his voice rougher than intended. "She's not wrong. I am lonely." The admission hung in the air between them, more honest than anything he'd said in months. Rochelle's expression softened with understanding, and she reached over to touch his hand briefly. "Loneliness is hard," she said simply. "After Jackson died, I thought I'd drown in it. But then I realized that sometimes the cure for loneliness isn't finding people who need you, it's finding people who choose to see you." "Is that what you're doing?" Serafina asked. "Seeing me?" "I'm trying to," Rochelle said. Another flight delay announcement echoed through the terminal and she sighed. "Looks like we're going to be here even longer." "Harmony, baby, are you getting hungry?" The little girl nodded enthusiastically. "Can we get pretzels? The big soft ones with salt." Rochelle checked her wallet again and Serafina saw her mentally calculating. This time he didn't let her stop him when he reached for his card. "Please," he said quietly. "Let me buy dinner. It's the least I can do after you've been so kind." "I can't let you." Yes, you can, Serafina said, using the authoritative tone that had once commanded boardrooms. You bought me hot chocolate when you didn't have to. You and Harmony sat with me when I was alone. You asked if I was okay when everyone else just walked past. Let me do this small thing. Rochelle studied his face for a long moment, and whatever she saw there made her nod slowly. Okay, she said. But just dinner. And only because Harmony's getting cranky when she's hungry. I am not cranky. Harmony protested, but she was grinning. As they made their way to the food court, Serafina realized something remarkable was happening. For the first time since the accident, he felt useful. Not because of his money or his former status, but because he could do something, even something small, to help people who had shown him kindness. The storm continued to rage outside, but inside the airport, something warm was growing. Something that felt suspiciously like friendship. The food court was a chaos of delayed travelers and crying babies, but somehow their little corner table felt like an island of calm. Harmony had managed to get mustard on her nose while eating her pretzel, and Serafina found himself laughing, actually laughing for the first time in months, as Rochelle tried to clean her daughter up. Hold still, baby girl, Rochelle said, wielding a napkin like a weapon. You've got more food on your face than in your stomach. It's not my fault the mustard jumped at me, Harmony protested, giggling as her mother dabbed at her cheek. Serafina watched their easy interaction with a mixture of joy and envy. When was the last time he'd had that kind of comfortable, loving relationship with anyone? His parents had been distant even before the accident, more concerned with social appearances than emotional connections. His ex-fiancée had left him within weeks of his diagnosis, claiming she couldn't handle the new reality. Even his business relationships had been built on mutual benefit rather than genuine care. Do you have any kids? Harmony asked him suddenly, her brown eyes curious and direct. The question hit him harder than expected. No, he said quietly. The timing was never right. That's too bad, Harmony said with the matter-of-fact sympathy of a child. Kids are fun. I bet you'd be a good daddy. You have kind eyes. Rochelle shot her daughter a look, but Serafina shook his head. It's okay. She's right, though. I think I would have liked being a father. I just spent so much time working, building my company, that I never made time for the important things. What kind of company? Rochelle asked, settling back in her chair with a cup of coffee. Serafina hesitated. His former company had been featured on magazine covers, written about in business schools, held up as an example of innovative success. But how do you explain that to someone who's struggling to pay rent? Technology, he said finally. Software development, mostly. We created programs that help businesses run more efficiently. That sounds important, Rochelle said, and there was no mockery in her voice, just genuine interest. I thought so at the time, Serafina said. I thought I was changing the world, making things better. But after the accident, when everyone just disappeared, I started wondering if any of it really mattered. Harmony had finished eating and was now building a tower with sugar packets. Mama says that helping people is the most important job, she said without looking up from her construction project. That's why she's a nurse. She makes people feel better when they're scared. Smart girl, Serafina said, watching the careful way Harmony balanced each packet. What do you want to be when you grow up? A doctor, Harmony said immediately. Like Mama, but different. I want to help people who can't walk. There's a man at our building who uses a chair like yours, and sometimes he looks sad. I think he needs help smiling again. Serafina's breath caught. This child, with her innocent wisdom, had just described exactly what he needed, someone to help him smile again. He looked at Rochelle, who was watching her daughter with obvious pride. She's wanted to be a doctor since she was 4, Rochelle said softly. After she met Mr. Rodriguez in our building. He's a veteran, lost his legs in Afghanistan. Harmony decided that someone needed to help people like him feel less sad. That's a beautiful dream, Serafina said, his voice thick with emotion. I hope she gets to make it come true. She will, Rochelle said with absolute certainty. I'll work every double shift, take every extra job, do whatever it takes to make sure she gets the education she deserves. She's going to change the world. The fierce love in her voice, the absolute dedication to her daughter's future, humbled Serafina completely. Here was a woman who had every reason to be bitter about her circumstances, yet she spoke about sacrifice as if it were a privilege. You're an amazing mother, he said quietly. Rochelle's cheeks flushed. I'm trying my best. Some days that feels like enough, and some days. She shrugged, a small smile playing at her lips. Some days I meet strangers in airports who remind me that kindness still exists in the world. The PA system crackled to life, announcing yet another delay. This time, the gate agent mentioned the possibility of canceling all remaining flights until morning. Around them, travelers groaned and started making phone calls to hotels. "Looks like we might be spending the night here," Rochelle said, checking her phone. "I should call my sister, let her know we won't be arriving tonight." "Will you be okay?" Serafina asked, concerned. "Do you have somewhere to stay?" Rochelle's smile was tired but determined. "We'll manage. Harmony slept in stranger places. Haven't you, baby? Remember when we slept in the car when the heat was broken?" Harmony said cheerfully. "That was like camping but warmer." The casual mention of sleeping in a car because of broken heat hit Serafina like a slap. While he'd been complaining about his lonely mansion with its perfect climate control and unused guest rooms, this woman and her daughter had been making the best of genuinely difficult circumstances. An idea began forming in his mind, crazy, impulsive, completely unlike the careful business decisions he'd once been famous for. But for the first time in 18 months he felt certain about something. "I have an idea," he said, his heart pounding. "It might sound strange, but hear me out." Rochelle raised an eyebrow, curious. "I have a house," Serafina continued, the words tumbling out faster than he'd intended. "A big house with guest rooms and plenty of space. If your flight gets cancelled, if you need somewhere to stay, you and Harmony could come home with me. Just until you can catch another flight." The offer hung in the air between them, and Serafina immediately began second-guessing himself. What was he thinking? Inviting strangers to his home? They'd probably think he was some kind of predator, some lonely rich man trying to buy their company. But Harmony clapped her hands together excitedly. "Like a sleepover?" Rochelle looked uncertain, her maternal instincts clearly warring with her financial reality. "That's very kind, but I couldn't impose." "You wouldn't be imposing," Serafina said quickly. "If anything, you'd be doing me a favor. That house has been too quiet for too long. It could use the sound of laughter." He saw the moment Rochelle made her decision, saw the shift in her expression from uncertainty to cautious hope. "If you're sure," she said slowly, "and if the flights really get cancelled, I don't want to take advantage of your kindness." "You couldn't if you tried," Serafina said, and realized he meant it completely. As if summoned by their conversation, the gate agent's voice filled the air with the announcement they'd all been dreading. All remaining flights were officially cancelled until morning. Serafina looked at Rochelle and Harmony, these two amazing people who had walked into his life when he needed them most, and smiled. "Well," he said, "I guess that settles it. Welcome to your first sleepover at my house." The ride to Serafina's house was quiet, with Harmony dozing against her mother's shoulder in the back of the luxury sedan. Rochelle kept glancing around at the expensive interior, her discomfort obvious despite Serafina's attempts to make conversation. The driver, a kind man named Thomas who'd worked for Serafina for years, was one of the few employees who'd stayed after the accident. "It's not much further," Serafina said as they turned into an exclusive neighborhood where house prices started in the millions. "Not much," Rochelle murmured, staring out at mansions behind iron gates. "Serafina, I think I should tell you I looked up your name while we were waiting. I know who you are. I know about your company, about what happened to you." Serafina's heart sank. Here it comes, he thought. Now she'll start acting different, either treating him like a charity case or seeing dollar signs. "And?" he asked carefully. "And I'm sorry," Rochelle said simply. "Not just about the accident but about how people treated you afterward. I read some of the business articles. The way your own board pushed you out, the way your friends abandoned you. That's not right." Her sympathy was genuine, without pity or calculation, and it nearly undid him. "Most people think I deserved it," he said quietly. "That I was too focused on work, too demanding, too—" He gestured at his wheelchair. "Too broken to be worth their time anymore." "Most people are idiots," Rochelle said with surprising fire. "Success doesn't make someone disposable just because their circumstances change. You're still the same person who built that company, who employed thousands of people, who created something from nothing." "I'm not, though," Serafina said as Thomas turned through his gates. "I'm not the same person. I used to be strong, independent, able to solve any problem. Now I can't even stand up without help." The car stopped in front of the mansion and Rochelle gently shook Harmony awake. "Baby, we're here." Harmony rubbed her eyes and looked out the window, her mouth dropping open. "Wow," she whispered. "Is this a castle?" "Something like that," Serafina said, but his usual bitterness about the house's emptiness was missing. Seeing it through Harmony's wonder-filled eyes, it looked different somehow. Less like a prison, more like possibility. Thomas helped them inside, carrying their small overnight bag while Serafina led them through the grand foyer. The house was exactly as he'd left it, perfectly clean, expensively furnished, and utterly lifeless. But Harmony's excited gasps as she took in the crystal chandelier and marble staircase brought a warmth he'd forgotten existed. "This is beautiful," Rochelle said, though he could hear the overwhelm in her voice. "Serafina, this is too much. We can't stay here." "Why not?" he asked, genuinely confused. "There are 8 bedrooms, most of them never used. The guest wing has its own bathroom, sitting area, everything you could need." "Because," Rochelle said, gesturing around at the opulence, "this isn't our world. I'm a single mother who works night shifts and clips coupons. Harmony's never seen anything like this outside of movies. We don't belong here." Her words stung, but not in the way she probably intended. They hurt because he realized she was right, not that they didn't belong, but that he'd become someone who lived in a world so far removed from real life that basic human kindness felt foreign. "Maybe that's exactly why you should stay," he said quietly. "Maybe this place needs people who understand what really matters." Harmony had wandered over to the grand piano, her small fingers pressing keys reverently. "Mama, listen. It sounds like heaven." Rochelle's expression softened as she watched her daughter. "Do you play?" she asked Serafina. "I used to," he said. "Not well, but I enjoyed it. I haven't touched it since." He gestured vaguely at his wheelchair. "Why not?" Harmony asked, looking up from the piano bench. "Your hands still work, right?" The child's logic was devastatingly simple. His hands did still work. His arms were fine. The only thing keeping him from playing was his own assumption that he couldn't. "You're right," he said slowly. "They do still work. Will you play something for us?" Harmony asked hopefully. "Mama sings really pretty. Maybe you two could make music together." Rochelle blushed. "Harmony, don't." "I'd like to hear you sing," Serafina said, surprising himself. It's been a long time since this house had music in it. Something shifted in the air between them, a moment of connection that went deeper than politeness or charity. Rochelle looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "Maybe tomorrow," she said. "Right now, I think someone needs a bath and a good night's sleep." As they headed upstairs, Serafina found himself seeing his house through their eyes. The guest rooms that had sat empty for years suddenly seemed full of potential. The kitchen that he barely used could be filled with the smell of home cooking. The garden that he never visited could ring with a child's laughter. "Serafina," Rochelle said as they reached the guest wing, "can I ask you something personal? After everything we've shared today, I think we're past worrying about personal questions. Why did you invite us here? Really? It wasn't just kindness, was it?" He considered lying, giving her a safe answer that wouldn't reveal how desperately lonely he'd become. But looking at her honest face, he found himself telling the truth. "Because for the first time in 18 months I felt like a person again," he said. "Not a victim, not a former success story, not a burden. Just a person who could help someone else. You and Harmony, you see me. Not my wheelchair, not my money, not my past failures. You just see me." Rochelle's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. "Good," she said simply. "Because we like what we see." As they settled into their rooms, Serafina realized something profound had shifted. For the first time since the accident, he wasn't afraid of tomorrow. He was actually looking forward to it. At 3 in the morning, Serafina woke to the sound of crying. Not the devastating sobs he was used to from his own nightmares, but the quiet, exhausted weeping of someone trying not to wake others. He lay in his bed listening until he couldn't stand it anymore. His wheelchair was beside the bed, and after 18 months of practice, he could transfer into it silently. The house's elevator made barely a whisper as he rode it down to the main floor, where he found Rochelle sitting in his kitchen, hunched over a cup of tea with tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry," she said immediately, wiping her eyes. "I didn't mean to wake you. I was trying to be quiet." "You didn't wake me," Serafina said, rolling closer. "I don't sleep much anymore. Bad dreams." Rochelle nodded, understanding without explanation. "Me too sometimes. Tonight was just overwhelming. This house, your kindness, the way Harmony's already talking about you like your family." She laughed shakily. "I'm not used to people being genuinely good to us without wanting something in return." "What usually happens?" Serafina asked, though he suspected he already knew. "Men who offer to help usually have expectations," Rochelle said carefully. "My landlord, my supervisor at the hospital, even some of the other parents at Harmony's school. They see a struggling single mother and think that makes me desperate enough to accept compromises." Serafina felt sick. "Is that what you think I'm doing?" "No," Rochelle said immediately. That's what scares me. I think you're genuinely kind and I don't know how to handle that. I've been protecting myself and Harmony for so long that I've forgotten how to just accept help without looking for the catch. There is no catch, Serafina said quietly. I meant what I said earlier, you're doing me the favor. This house has been a tomb for 18 months. Hearing Harmony laugh, watching you two interact, feeling like I'm part of something real again, it's the best thing that's happened to me since the accident. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, sharing the quiet intimacy of two people awake when the rest of the world slept. Finally, Rochelle spoke again. Can I tell you something I've never told anyone? Of course. Sometimes I lie awake at night terrified that I'm failing Harmony, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I work so much that I miss school events. I can't afford the things other kids have. Last month, she wanted to join the school science club but they needed $30 for supplies and Her voice broke. I had to tell her we couldn't afford it. My 6-year-old daughter looked at me and said, "It's okay, Mama. Science is probably boring anyway." But I saw her face. I saw how much she wanted it. Serafina's heart shattered. Rochelle. I became a nurse to help people, she continued, tears flowing freely now. But some days I wonder if I'm helping anyone at all. I can't even help my own daughter chase her dreams. Without thinking, Serafina reached out and took her hand. You are the strongest, most devoted mother I've ever met, he said fiercely. Harmony is lucky to have you. She's smart, kind, curious and confident because of how you've raised her. Don't you dare think you're failing her. But the science club was $30, Serafina finished. $30 that could have opened up a world of possibilities for her. Do you know how much money I waste in a single day? How much I spend on things I don't need, don't want, don't even notice? Rochelle looked up at him, her eyes red but alert. I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes, Serafina continued, but until today I had nothing worth spending it on. You want to help people? You want to make sure Harmony gets every opportunity she deserves? Let me help. Not as charity, not as some rich man buying his way into your lives, but as someone who cares about you both and finally has a chance to do something meaningful with his resources. I can't take your money, Rochelle whispered. Why not? You took my hot chocolate money at the airport. That was $3. And this would be whatever it takes to make sure Harmony never has to pretend science is boring because you can't afford the club fees. Serafina leaned forward, his voice urgent. Rochelle, I spent my whole life building wealth, and for what? So I could sit alone in this mansion feeling sorry for myself? Let me do something good with it. Let me help the people who've given me hope again. Rochelle was quiet for a long time, staring down at their joined hands. It's not just about the money, she said finally. It's about accepting that we deserve help. I've been independent for so long, fighting for everything we have, that the idea of someone just caring about us, it feels too good to be true. I understand, Serafina said, and he did. After months of being abandoned by everyone he'd thought cared about him, the idea of genuine connection felt equally impossible. But maybe that's exactly why we found each other. Maybe we both needed to learn that we're worth caring about. A sound from upstairs made them both look up, small feet padding across the floor. Mama? Harmony's voice called softly. Are you okay? Down here, baby, Rochelle called back, quickly wiping her eyes. Harmony appeared at the top of the stairs in her pajamas, her hair tousled from sleep. I had a dream, she said, making her way down carefully. But it was a good dream. I dreamed we lived in a castle and you weren't sad anymore, Mama. Rochelle's breath caught, and Serafina felt his own eyes fill with tears. This child, with her innocent wisdom, had just described exactly what he wanted to offer them, a place where sadness could be replaced with joy, where struggles could be eased, where a little girl's dreams didn't have to be limited by circumstances beyond her control. Come here, baby girl, Rochelle said, opening her arms. Harmony climbed onto her lap, then looked at Serafina with sleepy but serious eyes. Are you going to help us not be sad anymore? She asked with the directness that only children possessed. Serafina looked at this remarkable little girl, then at her incredible mother, and felt something click into place in his chest. For the first time since the accident, he knew exactly what his purpose was. Yes, he said simply. And I hope you'll help me not be sad anymore too. Harmony smiled, the kind of radiant smile that could light up the darkest room. That's easy, she said. We just have to be family. And in the quiet kitchen of his lonely mansion, surrounded by two people who had started as strangers and somehow become his salvation, Serafina Vale finally understood what wealth really meant. Dawn broke soft and golden through the mansion's tall windows, and for the first time in months, Serafina woke up without the crushing weight of dread in his chest. The house felt different, alive in a way it hadn't since before the accident. He could hear quiet voices and the sound of someone moving around in the kitchen, normal domestic sounds that had become foreign to him. When he made his way downstairs, he found Rochelle at the stove making pancakes while Harmony sat at the massive kitchen island, swinging her legs and chattering about everything she'd discovered in the house. "There's a library with books that reach all the way to the ceiling," Harmony was saying excitedly. "And a room with exercise machines and another room that's just for watching movies." "That sounds amazing, baby," Rochelle said, flipping a pancake with expert skill. She looked up when Serafina entered, her smile warm but slightly uncertain. "Good morning. I hope you don't mind I found some pancake mix in your pantry. Harmony was getting hungry and I thought." "I think it's wonderful," Serafina said honestly. "This kitchen hasn't been used for cooking in over a year. My housekeeper, Mrs. Patterson, usually just leaves prepared meals in the refrigerator." "Where is she this morning?" Rochelle asked, setting a plate of golden pancakes in front of Harmony. "She doesn't work weekends," Serafina said, accepting the plate Rochelle offered him with gratitude. "She comes Monday through Friday, keeps the house clean, manages the household staff. She's efficient." Something in his tone made Rochelle look at him more carefully. "But not warm," she guessed. Serafina shrugged, cutting into his pancakes. "She does her job well. I don't think she particularly likes working for A." He gestured at his wheelchair. "A what?" Rochelle's voice had an edge to it that surprised him. "Someone who can't take care of himself," Serafina finished quietly. Rochelle set down her fork with enough force to make it clink against the plate. "Serafina Vale, you listen to me. Needing help doesn't make you less of a person. I'm a nurse. I help people every day who need assistance with things they used to do independently. That doesn't make them failures or burdens. It makes them human." Harmony nodded seriously. "Mama helps lots of people. She says helping is how we show love." "Exactly," Rochelle said, her voice gentling. "If Mrs. Patterson makes you feel like you're a burden for needing assistance, then she's the one with the problem, not you." Her fierce defense of him was both comforting and unsettling. When was the last time anyone had stood up for him? When was the last time anyone had gotten angry on his behalf? "Speaking of help," Serafina said, changing the subject before he could get too emotional, "I want to talk to you about something. Both of you." Rochelle tensed slightly, her protective instincts clearly activated. "Nothing bad," Serafina said quickly. "Actually, something good. I hope." He took a deep breath, gathering his courage. "I want to offer you a job, Rochelle." "A job?" she repeated, clearly confused. "I need a personal care assistant," Serafina explained. "Someone to help with daily tasks, manage my medical needs, be available for emergencies. The pay would be significantly more than you're making at the hospital, with full benefits and—" He looked at Harmony, who was listening with wide eyes. "You and Harmony could live here. There's plenty of space, good schools in the area, everything you'd need." Rochelle stared at him, her mouth slightly open. "Serafina, that's incredibly generous, but I can't just uproot our entire lives because you feel sorry for us." "That's not why I'm offering," Serafina said urgently. "I'm offering because you're exactly what I need, and I hope I might be what you need too. You're a registered nurse with years of experience. You understand medical care, you're patient, kind, and professional. And frankly, after yesterday, I can't imagine going back to being alone in this house. But you're regular nurses are strangers who come for a few hours and leave," Serafina interrupted. "They do their job competently, but they don't see me as a person. You do. And Harmony." He looked at the little girl, who was following every word with intense focus. "She makes me remember what it feels like to smile." "Would I live here too?" Harmony asked hopefully. "In the castle?" "If your mama says yes, then absolutely," Serafina said. "You could have any room you wanted. We could set up a playroom, get you enrolled in the best schools, make sure you have everything you need for that science club and any other activities you want to try." Harmony's eyes went wide. "Mama, can we? Please?" Rochelle looked torn between hope and fear. "Serafina, this is too much. What if it doesn't work out? What if you get tired of having us here? I can't let Harmony get attached to this life and then lose it." "What if it does work out?" Serafina countered. "What if we become the family we all need? What if instead of 3 people struggling alone, we become 3 people taking care of each other?" The word family hung in the air between them, loaded with possibility and fear in equal measure. "Can I think about it?" Rochelle asked finally. "It's a big decision, and I need to be sure I'm making the right choice for Harmony. Of course, Serafina said, though his heart sank a little. Take all the time you need. In the meantime, you're welcome to stay here as long as you want. No pressure, no expectations. Harmony had finished her pancakes and was now exploring the kitchen, opening cabinets and marveling at the expensive appliances. Mama, look. This refrigerator has a TV in it. Don't touch anything, baby, Rochelle called, but she was smiling. She can touch whatever she wants, Serafina said. This is her home too, for as long as you'll let it be. Something shifted in Rochelle's expression at those words. She looked around the kitchen at her daughter, exploring fearlessly, at the abundance of food and space, at the possibility of a life without constant financial stress. Okay, she said quietly. Okay. Serafina's heart started beating faster. Okay, I'll take the job, Rochelle said, her voice growing stronger with each word. Not because I need your charity, but because I think we might be exactly what each other needs. And because... She looked at Harmony, who had discovered the walk-in pantry and was calling excitedly about all the food. Because my daughter deserves a chance to dream without limits. Serafina felt tears prick his eyes. Thank you, he said, his voice rough with emotion. You won't regret this. I promise you won't regret this. I hope not, Rochelle said, but she was smiling. Because if you make my daughter cry, I know exactly where to hide your body. Serafina laughed, surprised by the dark humor. Noted and understood. Harmony came running back from the pantry, her face glowing with excitement. Mama, there's enough food in there to feed a whole army. Are we really going to live here? We're going to try, baby girl, Rochelle said, pulling her daughter into a hug. We're going to try. As Serafina watched them embrace, he realized that for the first time since the accident, he wasn't just surviving. He was living. And for the first time in his life, he was exactly where he belonged. Mrs. Patterson arrived Monday morning to find Harmony building a fort out of couch cushions in the formal living room while Rochelle helped Serafina with his morning routine. The older woman's disapproval was immediate and arctic. Mr. Vale, she said, her voice tight with barely controlled annoyance, you didn't mention you'd be having guests. They're not guests, Serafina said calmly, though he could feel the tension radiating from Rochelle beside him. Mrs. Patterson, I'd like you to meet Rochelle Washington, my new personal care assistant, and her daughter Harmony. They'll be living here now. Mrs. Patterson's eyes narrowed as she took in Rochelle's casual clothes and natural beauty, then shifted to Harmony, who had paused in her fort building to wave cheerfully. I see, Mrs. Patterson said, and somehow managed to pack a world of judgment into those two words. And my position? Remains the same, Serafina said firmly. You'll continue managing the household staff and general maintenance. Rochelle will be handling my personal care and medical needs. I've been managing your care perfectly well for over a year, Mrs. Patterson said, her tone implying that Rochelle was some kind of interloper. You've been competent, Serafina agreed, but Rochelle is a registered nurse with years of experience. This arrangement will be better for everyone. Mrs. Patterson's smile was cold as winter. Of course, Mr. Vale. I'm sure you know what's best. Her tone suggested she thought exactly the opposite. After she left to start her daily routine, Rochelle sighed heavily. This is going to be a problem, isn't it? Not if I have anything to say about it, Serafina said grimly. Mrs. Patterson works for me, not the other way around. If she can't be respectful to you and Harmony, she can find employment elsewhere. I don't want to cause trouble, Rochelle said. Maybe we should. No, Serafina said firmly. Don't you dare let her make you feel unwelcome in your own home. You belong here. The conversation was interrupted by Harmony's excited squeal from the living room. Mama, come look. I can see the whole garden from my fort. Rochelle smiled despite her concerns. Coming, baby. She looked back at Serafina. Are you sure about this? About all of it? I've never been more sure of anything in my life, Serafina said, and meant it. The next few days fell into a surprisingly natural rhythm. Rochelle proved to be everything Serafina had hoped for as a care assistant professional, gentle, and intuitive about his needs without being overwhelming. She helped him with his physical therapy exercises, managed his medications, and somehow made even the most basic care tasks feel dignified rather than humiliating. But more than that, she brought life back into the house. She cooked meals that filled the kitchen with amazing smells, played music while she worked, and treated the mansion like a home rather than a museum. Harmony was equally transformative, her laughter echoing through rooms that had been silent for too long. Mr. Serafina? Harmony called one afternoon, bursting into his office where he was trying to read. Mama says you have a swimming pool. Can you show me? It's just Serafina, sweetheart, he said, saving his place in his book. And yes, there's a pool. Would you like to see it? The pool area was another space he'd avoided since the accident. Too many memories of hosting business parties and trying to impress people who'd ultimately abandoned him. But seeing Harmony's wonder as she stared at the crystal clear water made him remember why he'd loved it in the first place. It's like a lake. Harmony breathed. But in your backyard. Do you swim in it? I used to, Serafina said quietly. Not since. He gestured at his wheelchair. Why not? Harmony asked with her typical directness. Water doesn't care about legs, does it? Her innocent logic hit him like a revelation. She was right, there was no reason he couldn't swim. His upper body strength was actually better than it had been before the accident, thanks to using his arms for mobility. The pool even had accessibility features he'd installed but never used. You know what? He said, making an impulsive decision. You're absolutely right. Would you like to go swimming with me? Harmony's face lit up like Christmas morning. Really? Can Mama come too? If she wants to, Serafina said, though the thought of seeing Rochelle in a swimsuit made his heart race in ways that had nothing to do with exercise. An hour later, they were all in the pool, and Serafina was remembering the pure joy of moving through water. His legs might not work, but his arms were strong, and the buoyancy made him feel almost normal again. You're fast. Harmony called out, doggy paddling beside him with impressive determination. Your mama's faster, Serafina said, watching Rochelle's graceful strokes as she swam laps. Where did you learn to swim like that? High school swim team, Rochelle said, floating on her back. It was the only sport where my height was an advantage instead of a problem. Serafina found himself staring at her in the late afternoon sun, water droplets catching the light on her dark skin, her natural hair slicked back, her smile radiant and free. She was beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with makeup or expensive clothes and everything to do with genuine happiness. What? She asked, catching him staring. Nothing, he said quickly, feeling heat rise in his cheeks. Just, thank you. For all of this. For bringing joy back into my life. Something flickered in Rochelle's eyes, an awareness that made the air between them suddenly charged with possibility. Serafina, she started, but was interrupted by Harmony's excited splash. Look what I can do, the little girl called, attempting a handstand in the shallow end. The moment passed, but the awareness remained. As they climbed out of the pool and headed inside for dinner, Serafina realized that somewhere between the airport and this perfect afternoon, his feelings for Rochelle had shifted from gratitude to something much deeper and more complicated. He was falling in love with her. The thought should have terrified him. Instead, for the first time in 18 months, it made him feel alive. 3 months into their new arrangement, the house had transformed completely. Harmony's artwork covered the refrigerator, her toys were scattered throughout the living areas, and the sound of laughter had become as common as breathing. Mrs. Patterson had initially resisted the changes, but even her stern demeanor had softened under Harmony's persistent charm. Mrs. Patterson. Harmony called one morning, racing into the kitchen where the older woman was arranging flowers. Look what I made you. She thrust a handmade card at the housekeeper, decorated with crooked hearts and glitter. Thank you for making the best cookies in the whole world, she read aloud, her voice suspiciously thick. Well, Mrs. Patterson said, clearing her throat. I suppose they are rather good cookies. Serafina watched the interaction from his position at the breakfast table, marveling at his daughters, and when had he started thinking of Harmony as his daughter? Ability to win over even the most resistant hearts. She's got you wrapped around her little finger, Rochelle said, setting a cup of coffee beside him with a knowing smile. Completely, Serafina admitted without shame. Yesterday she convinced me that ice cream for breakfast was practically a health food because it contains milk. And you believed her? I wanted to believe her, Serafina said, grinning. There's a difference. Their easy banter was interrupted by the doorbell. Thomas announced that Dr. Martinez, Serafina's physical therapist, had arrived for his weekly session. Do we have to do this today? Serafina asked, though he was already heading toward his home gym. Yes, we do, Rochelle said firmly, following him. Dr. Martinez says you're making excellent progress and I'm not letting you backslide now. Dr. Martinez was a no-nonsense woman who'd been working with Serafina since shortly after the accident. She'd watched his transformation from bitter recluse to engaged participant with obvious satisfaction. You're looking good, Serafina, she said, setting up her equipment. Strong, healthy, engaged. Whatever's changed in your life, keep it up. I found my family, Serafina said simply, glancing at Rochelle who was helping Harmony with a puzzle nearby. Dr. Martinez followed his gaze and smiled. That'll do it. Family is the best medicine there is. The session was going well until Dr. Martinez suggested a new exercise that required Serafina to transfer from his wheelchair to a mat on the floor. It was something he'd done hundreds of times before, but today, with Rochelle and Harmony watching, his nerve failed him. I can't, he said, his hands shaking slightly. What if I fall? What if— Hey, Rochelle said quietly, appearing beside him. Look at me. You're not going to fall, but even if you did, so what? Harmony falls down 20 times a day and gets right back up. That's different, Serafina said. She's a child. She's supposed to fall down and get back up. I'm supposed to be— He struggled for the words. Human. Rochelle suggested gently. Because that's all any of us are, Serafina. Just humans doing our best. Serafina's the strongest person I know, Harmony piped up from her puzzle. He can do anything. The absolute faith in her voice broke through his fear like sunlight through clouds. This little girl believed in him completely, without reservation. How could he let her down? With Rochelle's steady hands guiding him, he made the transfer successfully. The exercise went perfectly, and when he was back in his wheelchair, Harmony cheered like he'd just won an Olympic medal. I told you, she said, abandoning her puzzle to hug him. You can do anything. Later that evening, after Harmony was asleep, Serafina found Rochelle in the garden, sitting on the bench by the fountain. The night was warm, filled with the scent of jasmine and the gentle sound of water. Mind if I join you? He asked. Please, she said, moving over to make room for his wheelchair beside the bench. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. Can I ask you something? Rochelle said finally. Anything. When you offered me this job, did you expect? She gestured between them, the air heavy with unspoken possibilities. Serafina's heart pounded. Did I expect what? This, Rochelle said quietly. The way we fit together. The way Harmony looks at you like you hung the moon. The way I— She trailed off, shaking her head. The way you what? Serafina asked, hardly daring to breathe. Rochelle turned to face him fully, her expression vulnerable but determined. The way I've started thinking of you as more than just my employer. More than just a friend. The confession hung between them, fragile as butterfly wings. Serafina reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. I hoped, he said honestly. From that first night in the airport, when you and Harmony made me feel human again, I hoped that maybe someday this could become real. But I didn't expect it, and I never wanted you to feel pressured. I don't feel pressured, Rochelle said, her fingers intertwining with his. I feel hopeful. Scared but hopeful. What are you scared of? That this is too good to be true, she admitted. That I'll wake up and find out it was all a dream. That you'll realize you can do better than a single mother who works night shifts and clips coupons. Serafina lifted their joined hands and kissed her knuckles gently. Rochelle Washington, you are the strongest, most beautiful, most incredible woman I've ever met. You saved my life in every way that matters. There is no better than you. Tears glittered in her eyes, but she was smiling. Even with all my baggage? Your baggage includes the most amazing little girl in the world, Serafina said. I'd say that makes me the luckiest man alive. So what happens now? Rochelle asked. Now, Serafina said, leaning closer, I'd very much like to kiss you if you'll let me. I thought you'd never ask, she whispered. When their lips met, it was like coming home. Gentle, sweet, and filled with the promise of forever. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. Wow, Rochelle breathed. Definitely wow, Serafina agreed. A giggle from the house made them both look up to see Harmony's face pressed against her bedroom window, grinning widely. I think we have an audience, Rochelle said, laughing. I think we have a daughter, Serafina corrected, and the word felt perfectly right. As they headed back inside, hand in hand, Serafina realized that his new life wasn't just beginning, it was flourishing. And the best part was, this was only the start. The next 6 months passed in a blur of happiness that Serafina had never imagined possible. What had started as a business arrangement had blossomed into something beautiful and real. Rochelle's official duties as his care assistant had gradually merged with the natural rhythm of a couple building a life together. The transformation wasn't just emotional, it was everywhere. The mansion that had once felt like a mausoleum now buzzed with life. Harmony had claimed the library as her favorite reading spot, often curling up with Serafina to work through chapter books together. Rochelle had turned the empty formal dining room into a homework space where Harmony could spread out her school projects while staying close to the adults. "Serafina, look," Harmony called one afternoon, bursting into his office with a certificate in her hands. "I won the science fair." Her project on plant growth had taken over half the sunroom for weeks, with Serafina serving as enthusiastic assistant and Rochelle providing scientific guidance. Seeing Harmony's pride in her achievement filled him with a paternal pride so fierce it almost took his breath away. "That's incredible, sweetheart," he said, pulling her into a hug. "I'm so proud of you." "I couldn't have done it without you and Mama helping," Harmony said seriously. "We make a good team." "The best team," Serafina agreed, meeting Rochelle's eyes over their daughter's head. The love and contentment he saw there made his heart race. That evening, after Harmony was asleep, Serafina found Rochelle in their favorite spot in the garden. The word, there, still gave him a thrill somehow. Without any formal declaration, everything had become theirs. Their morning coffee routine, their evening walks, their shared concern when Harmony had a nightmare. "She wants to be a pediatric doctor now," Rochelle said as he joined her on the bench. "Specifically, she wants to help kids who are scared of medical procedures feel brave." "She'll be amazing at it," Serafina said, settling beside her. "She has the biggest heart of anyone I know." "Well, second biggest." "Second." Rochelle raised an eyebrow. "Her mother might have her beat," Serafina said, leaning over to kiss her temple. "Speaking of which, I have something I want to talk to you about." Rochelle turned to face him, instantly alert. "That sounds serious." "It is serious," Serafina said, his heart pounding. "But hopefully good serious." He took her hands in his, marveling as always at how perfectly they fit together. "Rochelle, these past months with you and Harmony have been the happiest of my life. You've given me everything I didn't even know I was missing: love, laughter, purpose, family." "Serafina, let me finish," he said gently. "I know this started unconventionally. I know we've been taking things one day at a time, building something beautiful without putting labels on it. But I don't want to take any more days for granted." Rochelle's eyes filled with tears as understanding dawned on her face. "I love you," Serafina continued, his voice growing stronger with each word. "I love your strength, your kindness, your terrible habit of humming while you cook. I love watching you with Harmony, seeing the fierce, protective love you have for her. I love that you see me, not my wheelchair, not my money, not my past, just me." "I love you too," Rochelle whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. "And I love Harmony like she's my own daughter," Serafina said. "Because in every way that matters, she is." "Which brings me to my question." He reached into his jacket pocket with trembling hands. "Rochelle Washington, will you marry me? Will you let me spend the rest of my life loving you and Harmony, building something beautiful together?" The ring was perfect, not ostentatious, but clearly expensive, with a classic solitaire setting that caught the moonlight like captured starlight. But more important than the ring was the hope and love shining in Serafina's eyes. "Yes," Rochelle said, laughing through her tears. "Yes, of course, yes." As Serafina slipped the ring onto her finger, applause erupted from the house. They looked up to see Harmony pressed against the window again, clapping wildly, with Mrs. Patterson beside her, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. "I think the whole household was in on this," Rochelle said, laughing. "Harmony helped pick out the ring," Serafina admitted. "She said it had to sparkle like your eyes when you smile." "That girl?" Rochelle shook her head, overwhelmed with love. "Is going to be the best big sister," Serafina said quietly. "Big sister?" Rochelle's eyes went wide. "Someday if you want," Serafina said quickly. "I know it's early to talk about, but I want," Rochelle said firmly. "I want everything with you. Marriage, maybe more children, growing old together, watching Harmony become the amazing woman I know she'll be. Even if I never walk again?" Serafina asked, the old fear creeping in. "Especially then," Rochelle said fiercely. "Because you're not defined by what your legs can or can't do. You're defined by your heart, your mind, your soul. And all of those are perfect." As they kissed under the stars, surrounded by the sound of their daughter's excited cheers from the house, Serafina realized that sometimes the most beautiful love stories begin with the darkest moments. His accident had taken away the life he'd planned, but it had given him the life he'd never known he needed. He was exactly where he belonged. 1 year later, Serafina found himself back at the airport, not Gate 32, but the private terminal where he and Rochelle were about to board a plane for their honeymoon. The irony wasn't lost on him that his greatest happiness had begun in the place that had once represented his lowest point. "Are you nervous?" Rochelle asked, adjusting his tie with gentle hands. She looked radiant in her simple but elegant travel dress, her engagement ring now joined by a matching wedding band that caught the light with every movement. About flying? No, Serafina said, catching her hands and bringing them to his lips. About leaving Harmony for a whole week? Absolutely. Rochelle laughed, the sound still capable of making his heart skip after all this time. She's going to be fine. Mrs. Patterson has everything under control and my sister will be there the whole time. Plus, Harmony's more excited about having the house to herself than she is worried about us being gone. She asked me 3 times this morning if she could redecorate the living room while we're away, Serafina said, grinning. I think Mrs. Patterson is in for an interesting week. Their wedding had been perfect, small, intimate, held in the garden where they'd shared their first kiss. Harmony had been the flower girl, of course, walking down the makeshift aisle with serious concentration as she scattered rose petals. When the officiant had asked if anyone objected to the union, Harmony had piped up with, I object to anyone thinking they can stop this wedding. The laughter had lasted for several minutes. But the most meaningful moment had come after they'd exchanged vows, when Serafina had knelt from his wheelchair to present Harmony with a special ring of her own. Harmony Vale, he'd said, using her new legal name for the first time, will you be my daughter? Not just in my heart, where you've lived for months, but officially, legally, forever. The adoption papers had been finalized that morning, making their family complete in every way that mattered. Now, watching planes take off through the terminal windows, Serafina reflected on how dramatically his life had changed. The bitter, isolated man who'd sat alone at gate 32 felt like a different person entirely. That man had been wealthy but poor in all the ways that mattered. This man, husband, father, partner, was rich beyond measure. Mr. and Mrs. Vale? A flight attendant approached with a warm smile. We're ready to board you now, Mrs. Vale. Even after the wedding, hearing Rochelle called by his name sent a thrill through him. As they settled into their seats, Rochelle reached over and took his hand. Any regrets? She asked quietly. About what? Any of it. The job offer, letting us into your life, proposing to a woman with more baggage than a luxury cruise ship. Serafina turned to face her fully, seeing the vulnerability she still sometimes showed despite everything they'd built together. Rochelle Vale, you are the best thing that ever happened to me. You and Harmony saved my life, gave it meaning, filled it with more love than I ever dreamed possible. My only regret is that I can't go back and convince that lonely man at the airport to ask you to dinner that first night instead of waiting months to work up the courage. He wasn't ready for dinner that first night, Rochelle said wisely. He needed time to remember who he was underneath all that pain. And you helped me remember, Serafina said. You and our stubborn, brilliant, big-hearted daughter. As the plane taxied toward the runway, Serafina thought about the phone call they'd received that morning. Harmony's science teacher had recommended her for an advanced program for gifted students. Their little girl was going to change the world, just as Rochelle had always known she would. I've been thinking, Rochelle said as they lifted off, about what we talked about last month. The baby conversation? Serafina's heart started racing. They discussed having children together, but Rochelle had wanted to wait until after the wedding and adoption were finalized. I went to see Dr. Chin yesterday, Rochelle said, a smile playing at her lips. For my annual checkup. And I asked her about stopping my birth control, Rochelle said, her smile widening at his expression. She said whenever we're ready to try, we should go for it. Are we ready? Serafina asked, hardly daring to hope. I think we are, Rochelle said. Harmony's been asking for a baby brother or sister since the wedding. And I love our family, but I'd love to make it a little bigger. With you as their mother and Harmony as their big sister. That baby would be the luckiest child in the world, Serafina said, leaning over to kiss her. What about with you as their father? Rochelle asked. I'm still learning how to be a good dad to Harmony, Serafina admitted. But I want to try. I want to give you everything, Rochelle. Everything you've dreamed of. You already have, she said simply. Love, security, a home where laughter lives in every room, a daughter who adores you, and now the promise of more babies to spoil. What more could I possibly want? As their plane climbed higher into the sky, leaving behind the city where their love story had begun, Serafina realized that this wasn't the end of their story, it was just the beginning. They had a lifetime of mornings to wake up together, a brilliant daughter to raise, and possibly more children to fill their home with joy. The man who'd sat alone at gate 32, abandoned and forgotten, would never have believed this happiness was possible. But sometimes the most beautiful love stories begin in the darkest places. When two broken souls find each other and discover they fit together perfectly. Serafina Vale was no longer forgotten. He was cherished, loved, and exactly where he belonged. And this was only the beginning of forever. Dear listeners, thank you for taking this emotional journey with Serafina, Rochelle, and Harmony. Their story reminds us that love often finds us in the most unexpected places and that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the connections we make and the lives we touch. I'd love to hear from you. What was your favorite moment in this story? Did Harmony's innocent wisdom touch your heart the way it touched mine? And most importantly, do you believe that sometimes our darkest moments lead us to our greatest blessings? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Your stories and insights mean the world to me.